Welcome to my workshop. Today we're repairing an Engelhardt M1. Engelhardt bought the molds from Kay when they went out of business, and in 2019 Engelhardt went out of business, and Upton Bases bought the molds and jigs from Engelhardt. And the neck has snapped off of this base at least 2 other times, and I'm going to do a non-traditional way of reinstalling that neck, making sure that it doesn't pop off again. If you're not in an orchestra pit, if you're playing like bluegrass, rockabilly, psychobilly, you're dragging it around, you want that thing to stay on because it's under different conditions if you're just sitting in a nice AC controlled, theater. All right, and now you can see the collateral damage. You got all kinds of things happening here. You got a crack running along the side wall of the neck pocket. You got dowels and some gray glue. I'm not sure if the dowels were trying to fix that crack that's running along the side or whether or not they were kind of like a reinforcement to the repair. And you can see fragments of the neck pocket on the dovetail. And so here I'm just cleaning up that dovetail a little bit, and in the neck pocket. The neck keys really well onto the body. It kind of locks in, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm not trying to get rid of all that wood. I'm drilling out those old dowels and I'm putting fresh dowels in there, and that's going to close that crack. I did this with all the dowels, maybe except for one that I deemed secure. And I'm sinking some thin, and the thin is going to reach into the places where I can't. Now I'm clamping the top back on to the side of the neck pocket. So I call this the piece segment. There's a little piece missing on the right side, and I'm copying the piece on the left side, and I'm going to flip it around, making like a reverse mirror image, and I'm going to use that to create a new piece. There you can see what I'm trying to do. And I was wondering, what wood am I going to use? And then the cigar box had been kicking around my shop. I was going to throw it away. And it turns out the wood is just about the perfect thickness. And so you just kind of, sometimes synchronicity, you got to go with the flow and just use what's available. And I feel like that cigar box was calling to me for me to use it. This is a top of a ukulele that I had lying around, and I'm going to go ahead and laminate it to that piece of the cigar box. After all, the Engelhardt is a plywood base. That's what gives it its tone, plywood. So I'm going to go ahead and make this lamination now. And then I'm going to trace the piece onto the lamination using a number 2 pencil. Gonna cut it out at the bandsaw. And then my favorite tool in the shop, gonna refine it on the belt sander. Just going to use some thick super glue here. And then I'm going to glue that piece onto that face of the neck pocket. Just so. And I'm going to score now along the side because the neck isn't fitting perfect yet. Really making sure that neck fits on well. I don't want that little piece to be the thing that stops the neck from fitting on as tight as it did without it. And I'm using some amber shellac to get the color close. That was the first application, and I just kept going, and it got darker and darker and darker. It's going to look like a repair, you know, but it's going to look better than just the raw wood. I'm using a center line tool to get the center line of the heel. Now the heel was carved by hand, so it's not the same on both sides. So I'm going to make sure and use my eyes and make sure I like where that center line is laid out, ultimately, even though I was using a fancy tool to do that trick. All right, the cat's out of the bag. I'm going to screw this neck down, and it's not going to pop off again. That's the goal. So that big drill bit you see there is going to clear the screw head. And those are the first holes you see me drilling there. That's why I was striking that center line. Just cleaning out the hole slightly, same bit. Then I'm going to use a punch to establish where the center of the hole is. That's important because right now I'm using a smaller bit that is smaller than the threads of my screw. So that's what's going to catch and pull that neck down. Not bad. I'm measuring the threads of the screw because I want the screw to pass straight through the heel and not catch. So I'm chasing the hole I drilled with a bit that's slightly bigger. Just slightly. I want the screw to pass through there. Think of an electric guitar body. Just checking. And the threads were still catching, so I chased it with a slightly bigger bit. Got a splinter. Those tweezers are cool. They're just for this operation. It's glue time. Gotta butter up that dovetail. The customer was really patient with me, which I really appreciate. I set the expectation from the beginning that it would be around 5 to 6 months, and that's what it wound up being. I think like right at 5 months or so. And I was doing this in between my regular job, and then I had 2 other bases in my shop at the time, so I was just doing what I could when I could. The stuff that I didn't film was resetting the sound post and stringing it back up, making sure the bridge was in the correct spot. And I can tell in the end, the action was right where it was right before the neck popped off, so I was happy with that. You know, I was just going slow and steady. I'm going to make sure it keys on real good. When putting the neck on, I'm just making sure everything grabs really tight and keys on. Then Then I'm going to go ahead and take away some of that squeeze out. And I'm going to hand tighten those screws in there. I don't want to strip out those holes. I want the screws to do its job and really sink that neck down tight. Just like that. Then I just put one clamp to make sure it's secure to the face there, and if I wasn't using screws, you would have to use a series of ratchet clamps and have a bench set up for it and big clamps, and it's a whole thing. So the screws really help out with that downward clamping pressure. I didn't show it, but of course I dowed those holes. And then there was a bunch of checking and alligator type texture there on the heel, which I sealed with that amber shellac. And I was really happy with the way it turned out. And there's nothing quite like the sound of an Engelhardt bass, I will say. Thank y'all for watching. It really does mean the world to me. If you like what I'm doing and you want to see me repair more instruments like this Engelhardt M1, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That lets the powers that be know that I'm doing a good job, and in turn it'll motivate me to keep making content like this. Thank y'all. See you next time. Later.